You know we're just gonna jump right into this shit this time, right? Tell the YouTube auditor to go fuck himself and hop right into this motherfucker. Question and answer session number 3, and we're gonna kick it off with a question from Hurley is the man. A few months ago, after the Charlottesville KKK rallies, a poll was conducted that showed people in the South still thought the Civil War was about states' rights instead of slavery. I don't remember the number, but it was around 48% of people said that the Civil War was about states' rights over country rights. How is the country ever going to learn from current events when they don't even know their own damn history? How do you see things playing out? I don't normally do this, and this is not something you're gonna see me do very often, but a few months ago, John Oliver, he did a piece on the Confederacy, and it was a good 20 minutes or so. As soon as you said that survey, I immediately thought of that episode because he had a very similar survey in that episode, and I have a feeling that might be the same exact one. And anybody that wants to watch that particular piece, you can go look up John Oliver Confederacy and watch that show because it was damn near accurate as to what you're questioning right now. 99% of that video is exactly what I would say to answer this question. People in this country, particularly the South, are fucking ignorant. I'm not gonna mince words or play nice right here because that's the fucking reality. The majority of people who think the Civil War was over states' rights instead of slavery clearly don't know what the fuck happened in history. And chances are, in the South, you know, the states that have the lowest levels of education, reading scores, math scores, and schools that still teach people evolution never fucking happened, were taught history this way, and it's utter bullshit. The Civil War was about slavery. Period. Full stop. End of discussion. There's no opinions or alternative facts that will fucking change that. The crux of why the South wanted to secede from the Union was they wanted the ability to own slaves, and they wanted each state to make their own laws acknowledging slavery was a right, and that northern states abolishing slavery was not legal. 4 states in the South created their own declarations of independence and state constitutions, and guess what? The main reason that they wrote they were seceding from the Union was to own slaves. It wasn't about independence. It was about the ability to own blacks as property, and even the vice president of the Confederacy even said so. In a speech, Alexander's famous speech, the cornerstone speech, was the basis of white supremacy. It even says the Negro is not equal to the white man, and that slavery and subordination is the natural and normal condition. That's his own fucking words. You can't make that kind of shit up. And people who want to think this is about states' fucking rights clearly have no fucking clue about this shit. It was about slavery and the fact that southern states like Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, Texas, Arkansas, they continue to teach that Confederacy was about autonomous states' rights. It's bullshit. It continues to perpetuate this notion that the white man is superior and that minorities are less than human. It's why these states pay less per person for education and have these backwater jobs and shit economies. These states continue to refuse and acknowledge that slavery was the reason for the Civil War. And then they wonder why the rest of the world thinks they're fucking stupid. Ignorance is a dangerous device because people who are ignorant like this are easily manipulated. They're gullible, manipulative people who will believe anything if it falls within their shallow belief system. And you can't fucking fix that. You can't help people who want to stay ignorant and gullible, and as long as there are people out there who are willing to believe this bullshit, we're gonna have polls that show just how stupid Americans are when it comes to our own fucking history. Next up, from Fastinator, I guess that's how you pronounce that shit? I don't fucking know. Anyways, while the world gets yearly releases of $60 Call of Duty games, China, on the other hand, has free-to-play Call of Duty game called Call of Duty Online. It's for the PC. It's boots on the ground and has features from multiple Call of Duty games. What are your 2 cents on this game? While I don't know much about the game itself or how it actually works in China, I will say that this is most likely done just to get the game in China. As many people might be aware, China only recently starting allowing consoles into the country, with PlayStation 4 and Xbox One being the first ones in a very long time. That being said, games that are released in China still have strict regulations since that is a communist regime and they need to abide by certain rules. I wouldn't be surprised at all to find out that in order to release the games in China, the games had to be set up that particular way. Just to get into that country, developers probably had to make some concessions knowing they could find other revenue stream ideas to compensate for the loss of the actual $60 in sales. You know, you also have to consider China has no issue making counterfeit products. Oh, you know, they knocked that shit off without any hesitation, and the government will then deny, nope, no counterfeits ever existed in this fucking country. So if they tried to launch a product that cost consumers money in China, a counterfeit product would be created to pretty much make all the originals useless by the end of the time. So instead of going through the hassle of spending a bunch of money, I wouldn't be surprised that if games were funded heavily by microtransactions in order to get some of those dollars back. Otherwise, the main appeal of a free game to the population in China would be that sometime down the road, when their community finally grows and there are more gamers in the country, then you would start charging them actual money. Next question from Tyler Ricious. How have you enjoyed Naughty Dog's work over the past generation and a half, where they've moved away from platformers to Uncharted and The Last of Us, and are you looking forward to The Last of Us 2? Do you think they should have gone with a new IP? You know, I'll tell you now, ever since Uncharted, Naughty Dog has been pumping out one major hit after another. Even I thought after Uncharted 4 wasn't as good as some of the prior ones, and it was like a small step back, it's still better than 95% of the games on the market right now. The fact that their prior Uncharted games and The Last of Us were so stellar shows that they've basically been competing with themselves each and every other game that they put out. That tells you how good of a studio that you really are. That being said, I think The Last of Us 2 was all but guaranteed after you see the ending of the original one. You knew that open-ended 95% closure ending needed that additional 5% to complete the story. Personally, I don't think the game needs a sequel. But if any team can pull off a masterpiece and prove doubters wrong, it's Naughty Dog. I would like to see them get away from Uncharted, finish The Last of Us, and leave fans with a top-notch impression of their work while creating other masterpieces. But The Last of Us 2 has some major shoes to fill. How do you top what was arguably one of the best games from the last generation? Certainly top 5 games on PlayStation alone, and a game that was worthy of all those Game of the Year awards that it won. It was remarkable for storytelling, and it really brought movies into the video games. We've seen other games that have been able to manage to make it look like a movie, but that one was probably the best at making a movie into a video game. So how do you top that? How do you go out and go above and beyond what The Last of Us already did? I'll tell you right now, I do not envy Naughty Dog's position right now. Greatness is expected from them each and every time, and if they can pull off this magic once again, I don't think that any other studio will even come close to having a claim to being the best gaming studio right now. If The Last of Us 2 nails this shit once again, it's not an argument of who the best studio is anymore. It's an argument as to which studio is fighting for second place behind Naughty Dog. I think all the other studios are already fighting for second place, but if they nail another one, that's it. It's over. All the rest of you motherfuckers go home. They got the Game of the Year locked down at this point. Next question, nice and simple from Mako Boy. What motivates you? Meanwhile, you couldn't have asked a more general fucking question. You know, for most people, I would hope that for everyone that listens to this really rings true. But you should have multiple motivators. You know, it's not just frivolous shit like money, fame, power, success. No. There has to be a reason why you want all of those things. And while I have multiple motivators, things that have pushed me through my whole life, the biggest thing that has motivated me was that I was not supposed to be this successful in life. I wasn't. When you look at what my personal upbringing was in life, which wasn't as bad as others, don't get me wrong, I don't want to make it seem like I'm a sob story or shit like that, but basically, I wasn't supposed to make it this far in life. I didn't come from a traditional home, I didn't grow up with a silver spoon, although I certainly wasn't poor in life, I'll guarantee you that. I wasn't supposed to outperform kids in my school who spent more time studying than I did. I wasn't supposed to survive 4 years in college because of my upbringing. Flagged me as a high-risk candidate that would most likely not succeed. I wasn't supposed to venture into the business field that I did because, again, I don't fit the demographic of people who succeed in my field, but I did. Now, to be clear, there was never any point in my life that anyone ever directly said I was going to fail and that I wasn't going to succeed, that I was going to be a dropout, a flame out, crash and burn. It's mainly the statistics of my demographics that say that. It's looking at my upbringing, comparing that to kids who grew up in a higher middle class than I did, with parents who achieved more than my fucking high school dropout parents ever did. Yes, both my parents are high school dropouts. In a school system that looked at test scores and book smarts instead of the street smarts that I had, which other kids didn't have, I wasn't supposed to be where I am. And that's what's motivated me throughout life. The fact that I could have been another dropout like my parents, another college flameout like other kids who were classified in the same life experiences that I have based on test scores. Doubt is a good motivator. I'm not talking people who doubt you or your own personal doubt as whether you can accomplish things, but when society places these norms on you and says that you're part of a demographic that's not supposed to succeed, that's really a good motivator for people. There should be other motivators in your life, but when society says, I doubt you can achieve this, and you prove it wrong, That's an excellent motivator for anyone in life. Next question from I am the awesome guy. Okay, J Loco, it's about time you run for fucking president. I'm gonna try and help you out and get the gears turning with the same question I sent late as fuck last time around. You ignored my ass, you bastard. What is your plan in the debate against Donald Trump and anybody else you think you'll be running against in 2020? You know, I honestly have no fucking idea what you're talking about because I answered that shit already, and I already mentioned how I would debate him against Trump. I believe I combined that in a whole bunch of questions because I'm sure there was some question that asked me how I would run against Mark Zuckerberg or Cory Booker or any other person that would run as a Democrat. And I combined all those answers. Well, I don't go plan on finding that video or some shit like that, but I know I answered. But anyway, let's get back into this. Basically, I would be using his own tactics against him. Look, during the debates, Donald Trump had the ability to sit back and attack people who made decisions. Well, he never made a goddamn political decision in his life that didn't affect his own bank accounts. He trashed all his Republican opponents on their decisions because he could. He bashed Bush over the war, which wasn't even his fucking war, it was his family's wars. He bashed Kasich for running for office as the governor of Ohio, then stating nobody was watching Ohio while he runs. Then he bashes Hillary for being in office, making mistakes. Meanwhile, he has no public record other than fucking bankruptcies. His entire game plan was to knock their records while boasting what he will do since he has no record to show for it. And his argument style does three things. He tries to delegitimize facts with his own opinion, saying, no, that's bullshit, these polls are wrong, these interests are wrong, these generals are wrong, I know what I'm talking about. He deflects blame. Instead of accepting something, well, what about Hillary? What about the Democrats? What about Barack Obama? How come they do this? How come Republicans do that? And basically, he doesn't take any responsibility for himself, and he always deflects the blame. And then finally, he does trolling. He sits up there, nope, untrue, not right, talks about a lie, nope, can't happen. Basically, those are his three tactics. Now, when you put him up against me, somebody who loves to argue, somebody who enjoys every one of those fucking tactics he thinks he can get away with, guess what? He wouldn't stand a chance. Because just look at the facts right now. In his first year of office, he has signed no major bill. He said he would repeal and replace Obamacare. He didn't. He said he knew more than the Army generals, yet he threw them under the bus when 4 soldiers were ambushed and died in service. He said he would lower taxes for the middle class, only for the Republicans to try and pass this bill where it actually lowers it for the rich instead of the middle class. He talked real tough shit about China, Japan, Europe, Mexico, yet when he meets with them, he backtracks like a bitch. All this shit that he does in the debate is fucking gold because now his lies and his failings have been on display for 1 full year. Basically, he fucked himself over pretty good and he can't fix his errors. Now, you put his ass on stage with me, and I love to fucking argue. I love using facts, and all those tactics that he thinks he would get away with me wouldn't stand a chance. The first thing he tries to do is delegitimize facts. One thing that people will point out, this is what happened. He'll say, no, that didn't happen. Excuse me, do you have a fact to actually back that up? Do you understand that your opinion is not an actual fact? Oh, I would interrupt the shit out of him. Another thing he likes to do, well, what about Hillary Clinton? What about Obama? How come the Democrats did this and I had to fix it? Whoa. First of all, they're not in office. We're not talking about that. The question is, how come you're such a failure? How come you couldn't repeal and replace Obamacare when you said you could? How come you said that you thought healthcare was easy? And sure enough, when it wasn't, you had to backtrack that shit. And then when you combine that with actual trolling tactics with me, oh, motherfucker. You gotta realize, I know almost every debate tactic there is. Not gonna say I was on the debate team or anything like that, but I obviously know how to handle myself when it comes to debate. And a perfect example would be this. When you ask Donald Trump a question, he completely deflects on it. What are your thoughts on why the economy wasn't doing as well as you thought? Why didn't you repeal Obamacare? And he'll make every excuse possible. Oh, it was the Democrats, it was Republicans, it was everybody but him. As soon as they get to me and they ask me the question, you know what I will reply? Is it possible for me to donate my 2 minutes back to Donald so he can actually answer the question instead of actually avoiding the fucking thing? Or another one. Anytime he deflects away from the question, I'm gonna say, you do realize this is not the draft, so you don't have to dodge it with bone spurs or something like that. I would totally troll the motherfucker on stage. And everything that he would answer when he deflects from it, I would revert right back to it. I would tell the moderator, why don't you ask him the question again so he actually answers it and gives you an answer, as opposed to asking me the question. Because if he doesn't answer the question, I'm going to call him out on that. Basically, against me, he is utterly fucked on stage. There is nobody that can run away from my debate tactics because I don't fuck around. I work with facts, I work with logic, and the main thing is when you ask me the question, I answer the question. When you deflect from a question, I call you back out on that bullshit and force you to actually answer that motherfucker. 3 down, 1 more to go, and no, the video's not going to be posted tomorrow. For those that are outside of the United States, tomorrow is our Thanksgiving holiday, so I don't plan on doing any kind of posting on YouTube. I plan on eating a whole bunch of turkey and mashed potatoes and shit. So the last video will be coming on Friday. So as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit. And I'll see you guys in the final question and answer session video 2 days from now on Friday.